Today's guests are Vanessa and Xander Marin, your new couple BFFs. Vanessa is a sex therapist with 20 years of experience, and her partner Xander is a regular dude. Together, they're shockingly open, slightly nerdy, and a seriously funny couple that you want to grab sushi with. They share the ups and downs in their relationship while giving you step-by-step techniques for improving your own. You can connect with them on Instagram at Vanessa and Xander, listen to their podcast at Pillow Talks, or join their emailing list at vmtherapy.com. But I'm bringing them on the podcast today to talk about their new book, Sex Talks, the 5 conversations that will transform your love life. Their successful advice has already helped hundreds of thousands of people, and Sex Talks provides you with the sex education you wish you had, plus the tried and tested tools you need to create the sex life of your wildest dreams. Xander and Vanessa, I'm so excited for you guys. You just launched your first book, and it is out. It's called Sex Talks, the 5 conversations that will transform your love life. I think it's a really cliche and kind of fun that I'm interviewing you today on Valentine's Day to learn all about what it means to be a sex therapist, who and how you help people, and we'll dive into those 5 conversations for our audience today. But I just want to welcome you to the show and thank you for being here. I'm super excited about this conversation and kind of to learn more about what you do.
Yeah, we're really excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Vanessa, you are officially the sex therapist. Xander, you're the regular dude.
That's right.
But a couple working their way through 2023, trying to share with the world how to have a better sex life. But Vanessa, you are clinically trained. Can you talk a little bit about your background and what led you to become a sex therapist? And if you can dive into the details, what even is a sex therapist and how do you help?
So I wrote a book called Sex Talks with Xander, and the reason that I am a sex therapist is because of my first sex talk, which was the talk with my parents. I have such a vivid memory of that moment. I was 11 or 12 years old. We were in my parents' minivan. We're cruising home from grandma's dinner at grandma's house. And my mom looked at me in the rearview mirror and she said, "If you have any questions about sex, you can ask us." And I remember in that moment feeling, oh no, I am not allowed to ask anything. What they're really saying, please, for the love of God, don't ask us anything. We don't want to talk about this. And that moment really stuck with me because I was starting to hear things on the playground. I was very curious. I had questions, but I knew I wasn't really allowed to ask them. So I had no idea that sex therapy was a career at the time, but I just kept coming back to that moment of why is it so hard for us to talk about sex? Why is this something that's so embarrassing and so shameful? And, when I became an adult and started having my own struggles with my sex life of not knowing how to communicate, not experiencing a lot of pleasure, feeling disconnected from my partners, feeling the spark go out. I just kept coming back to that idea of why is this so hard for us to talk about?
Wow, it's super interesting. So when you went to school for therapy, is it like a specialty that you would go to residency for, or that you would spend extra time in a fellowship for? How do you specialize in sex therapy?
I always knew that I wanted to be a sex therapist, but there isn't really a specific career path for how to get there, which made it very challenging. I was like, how do I do this? So I ended up doing my undergraduate degree at Brown. I got a degree in human sexuality because at the time it was one of maybe 3 schools in the country that even had a program like that. So I went there and I was really going back and forth between, do I want to be a doctor and kind of go the more medical route, or do I want to be a therapist and go more of the psychological route? And I decided eventually that I wanted to do the therapy route. It just felt like it was more related to this central idea of talking about sex, getting more comfortable with it. So I went back to grad school. I got my master's degree in counseling psychology, became a licensed therapist, and now my specialty is in sex therapy.
So let's talk about the types of clients that you see then, and what are you seeing? Couples? Are you seeing individuals? What are some things that people come to you for in regards to their sex life?
A lot of us have this idea that we would only go to sex therapy if something is really bad or wrong, kind of similar to we still have that vibe around therapy. Oh, I only have to go to therapy if something's really going bad in my life or something's really wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea that we like to promote in our business is that sex therapy is for anybody who wants to have a great sex life. So it doesn't mean that you have a bad one or that something is broken. It's just we can always learn more and get better and feel more connection and joy and excitement. So one of my favorite comparisons is, with cookbooks. So people buy cookbooks and they don't feel like I'm a bad cook. I have to buy this cookbook. I'm terrible. We buy it because we love cooking. It feels exciting to discover new ideas and new recipes.
Have inspiration.
Yeah, exactly. Get inspiration. So we've really transitioned our business into focusing on online courses and guides and writing the book as well, because we want to promote that same sort of vibe. Like if sex is something that interests you, that you feel curious about, then why not learn a little bit more about it?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So can we unpack why someone might feel shame or embarrassed and what you've seen with clients in the past, why this is so taboo? And it was for your parents.
It was. I think it's really because we don't see any examples of it. Like if you think about every sex scene you've seen on TV and in the movies, we never see characters talking to each other about what they're doing. And when we see those scenes over and over and over again our entire lives, it makes us internalize this belief that, oh, if I've found the right person, if we have good chemistry, if we're the right match, then we shouldn't need to talk about it. It should just click between us. Things should flow effortlessly and easily. And so it really gives people this impression that talking about sex is a bad thing.
And then on the flip side, of course, the few examples that we do have of people talking about it, it's always in a negative context. Like the first thing that comes to mind for me is 40-year-old virgin, right?
Yeah.
Like he's got to talk about the fact that he's a virgin. He's got to get all this advice, hilariously awkward advice in awkward situations in order for him to have sex, in order for him to get better at sex. Like that's the only way we ever see that portrayed. And then, add that on top of the fact that most of us have had our first experience talking about sex, the talk with our parents. Maybe it was like Vanessa's for you. Maybe it was that you were expecting to get a talk and your parents never even did. Like, as kids, as teenagers, we pick up on the fact that it's awkward for our parents, that they feel shame. They're obviously not very comfortable talking with each other about it. They're certainly not comfortable talking to you about it. And so you pick up on that shame and embarrassment and you carry that with you for the rest of your life.
It's so interesting. 40-Year-Old Virgin, Steve Carell is like, that's such a classic movie and one of my husband's favorites. And it is true. When I actually think about it, there are no real examples of people having, I don't want to say constructive or like connecting type of conversations around what they need, what would give them pleasure, like what good sex would look like for them. And we do assume, that the person we're going to be with is just, they're good and they know what we want, or they're not good. And I feel like so many times that's obviously a red flag for at least some of my girlfriends growing up when we were dating guys and looking to get married and find our person. You never thought to have a conversation like, let me show you what I need, because you're everything that I'd want, but this like one area is just not really working. So let's talk about those clients that you're working with and de-shaming sex and really working through that and encouraging conversation. And then we'll go into the 5 conversations that you guys encourage people to have.
The main reasons that couples end up, coming to us and buying our guides or our courses are mismatched sex drives between couples, female orgasm problems. So whether it's not having an orgasm or just generally not feeling a lot of pleasure from sex, and then performance anxiety, most often in men, like feeling, just really struggling to get or maintain an erection, orgasmic timing, all that kind of stuff. So those are the 3 most common things. And I think most people will say that they have this general sense that they wish their sex life was just, there was something more to it. I think a lot of us have this feeling of like, yeah, isn't there supposed to be more? Shouldn't I be feeling more connection, more pleasure, more enjoyment? A lot of times we can't even fully put our finger on what feels off about things, but we feel like we should be experiencing something different from what we're experiencing. So we are all about sharing our own personal stories. In the book, we share a lot. The first page of the book opens up with us going to therapy early in our relationship because we really want to normalize that couples go through ups and downs. And if you've never learned how to talk about sex, then you're going to have a lot of miscommunication. You're going to have a lot of issues that come up, and you're not going to be able to solve those things if you don't have those basic communication skills. So we want to normalize. It's totally common and normal and okay to feel like the spark is starting to go out in your relationship, to feel like sex just isn't what you wish it would be. And communication is really the key to creating the sex life that you've always wanted.
Well, that's what you dive into in your book, is really encouraging people to communicate and have these 5 conversations. You have acknowledgement, where people are talking, general sexual communication. You have connection and emotional intimacy as number 2, desire as number 3, pleasure as number 4, and exploration as number 5. So can we go through, those seem like they're in order on purpose, because you can't really go to exploration if there's no general communication. So can we start from the beginning? A couple, maybe it just, they can't identify what's not great, but they want to explore this because they want to be, they want to be taught, they want to learn, they want to, kind of take, I think it's like biohacking, take your life to the next level in a sexual context. So how does a couple get started?
The first conversation is there for a reason. Acknowledgement. We know people are going to be feeling a little bit nervous, ashamed, maybe kind of awkward going into this. So we wanted to find a really gentle and easy place to start. I think a lot of us, when we think about sexual communication, because the idea of talking about sex is nothing new. Like, we've seen it in a million articles. It's always at the end, like, talk to your partner. But we never know, okay, well, but how do I talk to them? What do I say? When do I say it? So a lot of us, we picture either, now I've got to confess my deepest, darkest fantasy to my partner, or now I've got to tell my partner I don't like that move that they've been doing for years that like they think really works, but does not actually work. So a lot of us go to these pretty intense places in our heads when we think about it. So this acknowledgement conversation is the completely opposite direction. Instead, all that you are doing is getting comfortable with the topic of sex. So you're not making any complaints. You're not making any requests. You're not trying to change or fix anything. You're literally just getting comfortable talking about sex.
Yeah. And so if you're listening and you want to try putting this into practice right now, here's a super quick thing you can do. Think about what's one of your favorite sexual memories that you've had with your partner, and write it down, send it to them as a text, or talk to them about it, tell them about it the next time you're together, and just say, hey, I was thinking about this. I remember this was super fun and exciting, and I just wanted to share. And that's like a really great way to just put it out there. Hey, this, it was fun when we had sex in this place, or that time when we did that thing, or whatever it is. And that'll start to help make it feel like, oh, this is just a normal, fun, connecting conversation, not trying to drive a wedge, not trying to bring up anything else.
Not trying to bring up anything else. I think I send that text off to Chris, and he's like, "Where are you right now?"
Well, yes,
we don't. You're not trying to initiate sex with it. So if he says like, "Yeah, where are you?" and you're like, "Oh, sorry, I'm busy, but I was just thinking about it. I just wanted you to know." So it also brings that element of like flirtation back into the relationship too. Of like, now it just feels kind of fun and playful between the two of you.
Definitely lightens it up. It takes it back to that, like those beginning few months and years where you're, before the responsibility, before the stress, before the kids, where you're just kind of in the fun and the flow. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. It's interesting because when I was thinking about general sexual communication, I was thinking we were bringing up like everything, like opening Pandora's box, but it's really nice that it's like a light and easy way in. So
yeah, if you start talking about all the tough stuff right away, all you're doing is reinforcing that sex is a scary topic to talk about. Like, I don't know if Chris has ever come to you and said like, we need to talk. Like
Oh.
that's one of the most panic-inducing phrases, right? You're like, no, we don't. I gotta go. Like we never like to have conversations that feel that serious and heavy. And of course, there may be some serious things about your sex life that you need to discuss. But if you start in that place, that feels so overwhelming and scary versus just starting with like, oh, I was just thinking about you. That's all. Nothing else to share.
It definitely feels like it would put a wall up between a couple or make the other person feel like they're not good at it. And that would drive a wedge in someone wanting to pursue someone else because you're kind of expressing things that weren't so great that they might not have known about. Okay. I love that. It's light, it's easy, it's fresh. So what about the second conversation we need to have, which is more on connection and emotional intimacy? What does that mean?
A lot of us, when we hear the word sex, we just think of the physical act that we do with our bodies. And we have this way that we kind of compartmentalize our sex lives. Like that's just that thing that we do in our bedroom at the end of the night. But the reality is that physical intimacy and emotional intimacy are really deeply intertwined. And if we're not feeling emotionally connected to our partner, a lot of us don't want to be physical with them. So a lot of couples will tell us, especially couples in long-term relationships, couples who have kids, a lot on their plates, they'll say, we just feel more like roommates rather than romantic partners. It feels really disconnected between the two of us. And that feels like such a high bar to jump right into having sex if you're not feeling connected to each other. So again, we wanted things to feel easy. I feel like we're easing you into it here, but to really focus on what are simple, practical things that we can do on a daily basis. It's not a go on a 2-week couples only retreat, like what are little things that we can do on a daily basis to maintain that connection between the two of us so we don't feel like strangers in the bedroom at the end of the day.
And I think one of the things that will be the biggest takeaway for people when they go through this exercise is starting to understand that the things that your partner is going to like feel most connected to you over might not be the things that feel like the most natural or, connecting to you, because we all like to receive love. We like to receive connection in different ways. And so when we don't talk about it, we just kind of assume, okay, well, I'll do the things that I would like to have, to be done to me. And, what I found with Vanessa is that, she really loves compliments. There's a very specific compliment that I can give her. If I just say, hey, babe, you're killing it at insert the blank. Like it can be anything. She feels
every time.
She feels so connected to me. And for the longest time, I never did that because, compliments I enjoy them, but, I'd rather have a hug or cuddles or, some type of, physical touch. And so, I just never understood how that could be so meaningful to her until we started really having those conversations. And it was like, oh no, when she lights up, when I say that, like it's real. And so I just need to start tailoring my approach to connection to be the type of things that are good, that she is going to react most positively to. And then, she does the same for me. And all of a sudden it's like we're speaking each other's language.
Oh, that resonates so deeply with me, Xander. We are the same people. Chris is like, babe, I'm so proud of you. You're doing so good at work. Such a great mom. And I'm just like, I hear like the Peanuts teacher. And then he hugs me and I'm like, what's up? How you doing? You're my favorite person. And I'm like hanging on him like a koala bear. And he's just like, get off me. And if I tell him he's killing it as a dad, he's like, what'd you say? Yeah, it's so hard it's love languages, right? It's so hard to love people the way they want to be loved because I think your operating system is just to give love in the way that you love to be receiving love. How do you remind yourself of that? And because I think it's mostly a habit, right? If it's not so natural for you, Xander, like what are you doing to keep Vanessa happy and remembering to use your words, I guess?
Yeah, well, for me, it took a very long time to build that habit because, when we first had that conversation, I was like, okay, cool. I got the cheat code. I do the compliment. But then, of course, I forget about that, right? And then, a long time goes by and then, maybe we get in a little fight or something. And, it's like, hey, like, how come you haven't been giving me compliments? So for me, honestly, I just started setting reminders in my calendar. like there was a part of me that really didn't want to do that because it felt like, oh, this is an admission that I can't do it. But really, I had to reframe that as this isn't the way that I naturally would do things. But the way that I naturally would do things is not it's not the first way that she feels the most connection with me. So there's no shame in the fact that we're different. Like, of course, we're different people. So I just had to start putting reminders in. And over time, you will build that habit. Like for me, it's second nature now, but it took a long time. So I would encourage people, don't beat yourself up over the fact that you have to remind yourself, like make very, physical reminders in the calendar to do this, say this, send that text message, hug your partner, whatever it is. Like it's going to be, and after a couple of months of doing that, it's just going to be second nature.
I love that. I had a relationship therapist on the podcast, and it's interesting because she brought up having mini check-ins because of what you said, Vanessa. Can we talk? Like, can we talk feels like, oh, great. Now you're going to unload. I got to finish folding laundry first, or I got to do this thing first because we're going to be here a while. Right. And her check-ins were 20 minutes and they were set on the calendar. Like you said, Xander, like set a calendar reminder, just make it a thing that you do that in your business all the time. You do it scheduling your kids' lives. Like you do it everywhere else. Right. Like, why can't we just do it in our relationship? And it made such a difference because it's like you start holding hands and connecting and having sort of like sharing the things you're grateful for first. And if it's 20 minutes, like the timer is set, like what's good, what can we work on? And the big things might come up in that conversation, but it doesn't feel like this like daunting therapy check-in where someone's going to unload all over you. So I love that. I think I'm going to like buy some Post-its and leave in like compliment notes and throw some calendar reminders in my phone because it's true. You bring up the things that aren't going great, especially if someone loves compliments or sort of like verbal communication as their form of love. A lot of the verbal communication can be like, hey, next time, can you not? Or can we work on? And it's mostly criticism and less often the good stuff, out of just daily habits in life.
That's a really good point that you bring up because that's what we talk about in this conversation as well. There's a lot more to it than just the love languages, but we do tend to really focus on the things that are going wrong in our relationship, things that annoy us about our partners that they forgot to do. It's just very easy for our brains to fixate on those things. And so another thing that we talk about in the chapter is making a conscious effort to call out the things that your partner is doing right. Yeah. And that you will be shocked by how hard that is initially because our brains are so wired to go to the negative. But research has actually shown that gratitude is the number one predictor of marital success. And gratitude is really interesting because it takes 3 seconds for me to say, hey, I saw that you unloaded the dishwasher. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, you're looking really nice in this shirt today. It's super cute. I'm glad you put this one on. It takes just a few seconds, but it's the number one predictor of marital success. So again, it's just another practical, easy thing that we can do that has a huge impact.
That's so awesome. And something that really just anything that you can feel grateful for, it really just changes your emotional state for the whole day anyways. So it's like a double bonus. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Your next conversation is all about desire. So can you give me an example of how you would approach this with Xander, and how are we talking about desire?
So this chapter is all about what do we need to get turned on and feel in the mood. So one thing that came up with Xander and I early in our relationship, once that initial spark had worn off, we'd moved in together, we were spending a lot more nights on the couch, is that we both started initiating sex in some pretty boring ways. So it was often like, hey, should we do it? Like it's been a while, I guess. Yeah. Like, should we? And it wasn't something that either one of us were getting very excited about. So we really had to put a lot of work into figuring out new and exciting ways to initiate sex. And I think this is something that so many couples struggle with. It's the longer that we're in a relationship, the more vulnerable it feels to initiate sex. So a lot of us do go into that kind of lackluster, boring initiation. But what we talk about in that chapter is that initiation should feel like an invitation. So Kelly, like imagine you have a friend of yours that you haven't seen in a while and you want to hang out with her. Like you're not going to call her on the phone and say, it's been a while. We should probably hang out, right? Like, you're like, hey girl, I haven't seen you in forever. I'm so excited. Do you want to go to this place? There's a new bar down the street. I heard they have really great cocktails. We could go to the restaurant right next door afterwards. Like, it's going to feel fun and exciting. Even the energy that you're delivering that invitation is going to feel really fun, right? So it's a totally different vibe than, hey, you want to do it?
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes back to that first conversation where your parents weren't really comfortable talking to you about it and it was shameful. That internalization, then when you've been in a relationship for a long time and maybe there are lulls in your sex life and then needing to build up the courage or kind of like figure out how you're going to like poke the bear and be like, hey, I'm over here. Let's do this. Right. But so what are some fun and exciting ways to initiate sex with your partner if you are in a long-term relationship? How long have you guys been together?
15 years.
Okay. So 15 years. What are some fun ways or interesting ways that you've initiated sex with one another?
Well, in the book, we talk about, we were just talking about the love languages. We talk about the initiation styles, which is a model that I came up with to describe very similar to the love languages. Like we all like to have sex initiated in different ways. And so this model gives you this opportunity to talk about it with your partner and say, okay, which kind of energy do you like this one? Do you resonate more with this one? So one thing that we discovered is one of the types is called play with me. So a lot of times we get very in our heads thinking initiation has to be super seductive. It's like either I'm being super boring or I have to go really over the top. I have to wrap myself in saran wrap and greet him at the door wearing nothing else kind of thing. So what we discovered about ourselves is we're very silly and goofy people, and we like bringing that into our initiation. So we'll make sometimes they're impossibly dumb jokes, like sexual innuendo types of jokes to get things started. Sometimes we will make a bet on something like, we just had the Super Bowl. Like, who do you think is going to win? We're going to put a bet on it. The winner gets oral sex or something like that. Yeah. We've done things like having a certain song that means whenever we play it, that's sort of the message that we're sending to each other. So we've discovered that the more playful we are with it, like that feels really fun and exciting to us.
Yeah. So I think that, it's really transformative when you start thinking about it in terms of energy. Like what type of energy do I like to feel when I'm having sex? What type of energy feels best to me when, I'm in the process of getting turned on? Because that can be a much easier way to identify what it is you like versus having to come up with the specifics of, I like it when you say this and then you do this very specific thing. So it's like, do I like to feel playful energy? Do I like to feel serious energy? Do I like to feel whatever?
Yeah, like one of the other types is called take care of me. So that type really likes when their partner like does their chores without being asked, maybe does something like draws their partner a bath, that kind of thing. So, I know there are a lot of dumb jokes about like porn for women is just a bunch of men vacuuming, but for a take care of me type, that actually is going to be a turn on. Like you're being an adult, you're just doing your stuff without me having to ask you, remind you of it. Like, yes, I like this.
Yeah, that is, I think I'm probably more of a playful type person. And maybe when I was younger, before I had kids and like was pregnant, I'm like so pregnant right now, So playful definitely feels a lot more in my wheelhouse than like brown chicken, brown cow, like, I don't know that that's more of a waddle happening right now than like a sexy catwalk. Right. So, but I think being reminded that energy changes. Like, I'm not going to be like joking the entire time we're having sex. Just let's joke getting into it. Let's have some fun and some play. I love that you have kind of secret codes or messages or, your private little words or whatever it is that triggers to someone or your partner, not just anyone, but your partner that you're in the mood, because it doesn't, again, it's like if everything is so taboo or shameful, even saying, I really feel like having sex right now might feel really intimidating to someone, even though they might have been, be together for a couple decades.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
This is something a lot of the parents in our community will tell us, like, yeah, we love this suggestion and coming up with a specific phrase that we can say in front of the kids where the kids have no idea. So one of the funniest ones we ever heard was one couple said, oh, we're going to go do taxes. Just like your kids have no clue what that is.
Except your kids are getting this idea that God, like they're
paying taxes.
God, taxes are so awful. They're just doing them throughout the whole year.
Yeah. Another genius one was we're planning Christmas presents, so you can't interrupt us, or you're going to get fewer Christmas presents. I thought that was hilarious. So it can be fun, whether it's just a little code phrase. You can even do it over text. Maybe there's a specific emoji you guys agree on that whenever you send just that emoji, that's what that means. The song can be fun. It's just, it makes it feel like you're in your own little world together.
I love that. Now, you talked about in the beginning of the podcast, a few things that people come to you for mismatched sex drives, performance anxiety, and orgasmic timing. How do those challenges affect someone's confidence in initiating sex? And is that, sometimes or a lot of the time a driver of a decrease like sexual activity with a couple?
Yeah, let's talk about mismatched sex drives, because that's one of the most common things that comes up for people. And we get into it a lot in this chapter. So most people don't realize that there are actually two different sex drive types, and they boil down to where you feel desire first, in your head or in your body. And a lot of times when people think that they have mismatched sex drives, it's not actually that their sex drives are wildly different. It's just that they don't understand these two types, and that each partner is one of, each type. So most of us think desire is supposed to be spontaneous. That's one of the types. You feel it in your head first. That's always what you see on TV and the movies. You just kind of, somebody spontaneously gets in the mood. They go grab their partner. You're rushing off to the bedroom 10 seconds later. But for at least half of people, and most of them are women, our desire works in a different way, responsive sex drive type. So that's when we need to feel turned on in our body first before our head is going to start thinking that this sounds like a good idea. So if you have ever been in the middle of sex or even at the end of sex and caught yourself thinking, that was really fun. Why don't I want that more often? That is a classic responsive sex drive type. It's that your body needed to be turned on first. So if you ask a responsive sex drive type, do you want to have sex? Are you in the mood? They're always going to respond no, or almost always going to respond no, because they're not turned on in their body yet. So their head's not there.
And then furthermore, they can even feel some shame or anxiety because it feels like a pop quiz. It's like, oh, wait, you wanted sex right now, but I don't. Something must be wrong with me, because when you said that to me, all of a sudden, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not ready yet. Mm-hmm. And then that can make you feel even less in the mood.
So for a lot of couples, just understanding that responsive desire is a thing, that it's not that you're low desire or no desire, it's just that your desire works differently. That can be completely life-changing information. And for a lot of responsive desire people to recognize, like, I just need to give my body the opportunity to feel something first, then my head will be interested in it later. Just knowing that can make such a big difference.
Well, and I feel like this book becomes then a total guide for that couple, because if someone is a responsive type, you want to know what also is their initiation type. Because if you're coming at them trying to be all seductive, but they actually need a light, like joking type of start to get going. And then they're like, oh, my body's catching up. I really like this. I really want to do this. You may be missing the boat trying to get them on board when it's not even their type of initiation.
Exactly.
Yeah, those types are so important. And one other thing that we really like to suggest to people is a really simple word swap. Instead of do you want to have sex or do you want to do blank, it's are you open to sex? Are you open to a massage? Are you open to cuddles, making out, whatever it is? Because that lowers the bar a bit. It's not like, oh, I have to either, it's not an all or nothing. Like, oh, I'm promising sex or nothing. It's, oh yeah, yeah, maybe I could be open to that. And it increases the time frame. It's not like, okay, we have to do this right now. It's like, okay, yeah, let me think about that. All right, I need to cross a couple more things off my to-do list, and then I could be open to that. So that really can change things for a lot of couples if you start talking about it that way, especially if one or both of the partners is responsive.
I love that. Now, you brought something up that I think is really interesting. Are you open to making out? So for, I think, a lot of people, it's when the makeout begins, we think it's going to end in one place. Can we talk about sexual activity in a long-term committed relationship, in a new and fun relationship? But like, how are you opening the doors to something? And I don't want to say like shutting it down, but that kind of thing.
This is a big question that comes up for a lot of people. They think, well, what if I start making out and I'm just not interested in it going further? And so it's always important to us to reinforce, you get to say no at any point. Just starting to kiss your partner is not a contract or a guarantee that you're going to have intercourse or you're both going to have orgasms, whatever it is. And so in the book, we talk about, I actually share an example where this came up with a couple client of mine. And I just turned it back around to them as a question. I said, okay, what would you rather? You guys only make out when you both can guarantee that it's going to lead to more, or sometimes you have makeout sessions, sometimes it does go further, and sometimes it just stays at a makeout session. And when they were presented to it as a choice, they were both like, yeah, I'd rather sometimes it just be a makeout session. And maybe there's a little disappointment. Maybe one partner wanted to lead to more and one didn't. But I'd rather that than like hardly ever having a makeout session. So I think it's just a great question for a couple to ask themselves. And a big piece of it is, can we allow one partner to be turned on and not feel like it's my obligation now to do something that I don't want to do? And it's tricky. Sometimes there are moments where you might feel a little bit guilty, you might feel a little bit embarrassed, but that's just a part of being in a relationship, And again, if it feels like those are the two choices, which one do you want to choose?
Always more touch over less touch. I'm a Xander person, right?
And we also share in that conversation, we share how to turn each other down gently. Because a lot of us we're not good at initiation and we're not good at the turn down either. So if it feels like, you're pushing your partner away, like, okay, stop making out with me. I don't want to touch you anymore. Of course, that's going to hurt their feelings.
Yeah, it's going to feel like, oh, like I did something. What did I do wrong? Like, should I have not even done this in the first place?
But we teach much gentler ways of saying no, of kind of redirecting, so it doesn't feel like this huge rift between the two of you.
Yeah, I remember earlier in my relationship with Chris, like, we were like first married without kids. And I always told him, like, I won't turn you down, but you need to turn me on. And, but at the same time, it's like, sometimes you are going to turn each other down at certain points in your relationship. And the last thing I would want is for him to stop pursuing me. And so there's sort of this, the gentle turn down it sounds like a highlight of the book for me, because, you love that person. You want to satisfy them. You want them to be happy, but you also need to own like where you're at in your day, in your week, in your month, like that kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many interesting pieces to this that can be so valuable for a couple. So one thing, this kind of crosses into conversation 4, into pleasure, but one thing we encourage couples to do is to stop putting so much emphasis on intercourse. Like in male-female couples, most of us, when we say have sex, we just mean intercourse. Like we've really prioritized that activity. But sex can be anything you want it to be. We say in the book, everything counts as sex. That's one of our mottos. So if your partner is turned on and you're not, it could be a one-sided thing. Maybe you're literally just keeping your partner company, giving them some kisses, talking dirty to them as they masturbate, take care of themselves. Like that can be sex. So that could be one way to look at it. But, we do talk really specifically about if you're just a hard no, I'm just not interested in any sort of physical activity, ways for it to not feel like it's the complete end of connection between the two of you. So even if you guys could continue, maybe you just go on the sofa and you cuddle, or you give each other a hug, or you have a nice conversation. Like that way, it doesn't feel like I'm saying no. And now not only are we not having sex, but we're not having any connection whatsoever. That can feel very jarring.
Right. I mean, I feel like in my marriage, I'm like, that would feel like, okay, what, not like, why are we married? But I mean, you're there for an emotional connection. You're there for a physical connection. You're there for like the human experience, And so all the hard no's and the walls that get put up between people. I mean, we're tribal beings. We need our people, right? So let's dive into pleasure, because that I think is key, just like initiation, in understanding what we need. So how do we discover and explore pleasure?
This is yet another way where the movies and TV really do us dirty. We're taught to have this expectation that if we have the right chemistry with somebody, they should just know what we want automatically.
Like they know us better than we know ourselves.
Yes. And the reality is that we say there's no such thing as being universally good in bed, because we're all so different. So the people that I had sex with before I met Xander, they liked very different things. So something that might have been a slam dunk for a past partner, Xander might not necessarily like that. So we go into this conversation normalizing, like it's not a bad thing to talk about what brings you pleasure. And we have a lot of super fun exercises in this conversation, because a lot of us, like if you were just to hear the question, like, what do you want in the bedroom? It feels like a big question. You're like, oh, I don't know how to describe it. I'm on the spot. I don't know what kind of answer to give. So we have all sorts of fun exercises, like making your touch maps, identifying where on your body you like to be touched, in what ways, going back to what Xander was saying, like what kind of energy you like to be touched with. So that's a great exercise in there. And then we also spend a lot of time talking about, for male-female partnerships, the mismatch in enjoyment, like the orgasm gap that's happening. So that's a really fascinating conversation to understand, like, how does female pleasure really work? What do women really need? And I think the way that we frame it makes it feel very approachable, not like you're, having to tell your partner, like, you're bad at sex or anything like that. And we talk a lot in that chapter. Also, some of the most interesting stuff for me, interesting conversations Xander and I have ever had, are around the expectations that he had of himself about, like, being a man and what men are supposed to do when it comes to sex.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, like men are really socialized to feel like we're supposed to know we're supposed to know everything about sex. We're supposed to know exactly how to please our partner. We're supposed to be really good at it, regardless of how much experience we actually have. And that just creates so much pressure, and it boxes us in, because I think when we get into a relationship with someone, we really try to gravitate towards the few things that, like, a couple things that seem to be working, where it's like, okay, cool. All right, we just had sex. It seems like she really enjoyed it. I don't actually know, because we didn't talk about it, but it looked like it. So if she must like that. So I'm going to keep doing those things. And you kind of end up like locked into this really narrow routine of things, all in the service of living up to this expectation that, I feel like I have from the way that my friends have talked about it, the way I've seen it portrayed on TV and in the movies. And in reality, like, that just closes the door on us having so many new experiences. It closes the door on me really understanding, like, what she actually wants or needs. And so, we try to kind of lay all that out so that we're not saying, like, okay, guys, you just have to do something that feels really uncomfortable. But we just try to say, hey, the deck has kind of been stacked against us, and we got to start kind of peeling back the layers a bit and just getting a little more curious about, maybe it's not actually all about me. It's not all about, me being in charge or me knowing what, me being good at it, but can I try some new things? Could we talk about what else might work better? Because the reality is, the more we enjoy sex, the more we want sex. And I think that's the other key thing for men to really understand, especially men in male-female relationships, is that the more your partner is enjoying the sex that you're having, the more they are going to want to have more sex, which is probably good for you.
Probably your goal.
Yeah, which is probably your goal. And so, yeah, it's like, would you rather be fixated on giving this air that you know exactly what you're doing, and maybe she's not actually enjoying it that much? Or would you rather open things up and try some new things and actually start having some really extraordinary sex that she's going to be craving?
Oh, I love that. So, Vanessa, let's head back to the orgasm gap, because I think obviously it's in the same chapter. It goes hand in hand. If Xander expects that he's supposed to know everything and he's just kind of leaning on movies and porn or whatever his friends talked about in the, locker room or whatever the thing is, like, that's a lot of pressure. And if the communication lines aren't open and he's not asking you the questions, did you like that? Did you not like that? Does this feel good? Does that feel good? Then he's just kind of looking for facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we can kind of dive into the fact that women are supposed to act a specific way. And so they may be giving off airs about, this is how I feel, or I don't want to say faking it, but there may be some faking happening or some theatrics. So
we're all setting ourselves up for collective failure.
I talk really openly in the book that I faked orgasms for years with lots of partners because I felt that pressure of, I want to make it seem like things are clicking. I want to boost up his ego. I want to make it feel like we have good chemistry. And so I would fake right from the get-go with a new partner. And then, of course, would get myself into this hole of, he thinks that this is what works for me. It's not what works for me since I'm faking it. But now I can't. How do I dig myself out of the hole?
You're locked in.
I don't want to tell this partner that I've been lying, but how do I ask for something different? I don't know what to ask for because I don't know what works. So it was a really tough hole that I dug myself into. But that's, again, the reason why this communication is so important. If we're not telling our partner what it is that we like, then how are they going to know?
So you brought it up earlier, but you have your, pleasure mapping where you find out what type of touch and where on your body that you like to be touched. But how are you opening those lines of communication during the process of having sex, whatever that is, and continuing to learn and explore one another?
Another tough area where a lot of us get into feedback. How do we give our partner feedback without making it sound like we're, a strict teacher giving them all these instructions or hurting their ego?
Unless you get off on that, in which case, go all in on
that. Role-playing fantasy around that. But so we have this framework for giving feedback in the bedroom that we call positively pleasurable feedback. And it's based on research that has shown that people respond better to positive reinforcement than negative. So of course, if I just tell Xander, no, stop that, don't do that, it doesn't feel good, not only does he not know what to do, but now he does feel hurt and embarrassed, right? But if I can focus on what is something that he's doing that feels good and ask for even more of that, that's the whole idea behind positively pleasurable feedback. And we've found that you really can make a variety of requests in this framework. So for example, one thing that comes up a lot with women is they say, my partner jumps right to sex. Like it's just straight to the intercourse. I want more time. I want more kissing. I want more buildup. So again, if I tell my partner, stop rushing right to sex, that's not going to feel good for him. But if I can say something like, you make me feel so good when you kiss me, when you're being so soft and gentle, and like touching all over my body. I can't stop thinking about it. That made me feel so good. I'm making him feel good. He's already like feeling good about himself. He feels like he's got the code to what I need. I'm asking for more of it, but in a subtle way, not in a way that's making him feel like he's been doing it wrong or bad beforehand. So finding some sort of way to, make those requests feel positive, grounded in something that they're already doing right that you want more of.
I love that. So you've opened the lines of communication, you're having sex, you're giving positive feedback, you know how to initiate, you're having sex a little more often. You're like, we've got this. 15 years in, rocking it. Vanessa, you rock at this, right? So how do we explore or go through exploration of what should we try next? How do we continue to have fun and explore what someone might be open to and what might, be scary or a turn off to someone?
Research has found that the best way to keep the spark alive in a relationship is to try new things together in and outside of the bedroom. When we have new experiences, we see our partner in new ways, they feel fresh and exciting and fun. So the idea behind exploration is not that it's whatever you're doing is bad and you have to stop doing that, but just to promote this attitude of continuing to explore, continuing to have new experiences with each other. So when it comes to trying new things in the bedroom, again, a lot of us go to these really extreme places and we think, oh, well, now we've got to be tying each other up and I'm going to be hanging from the rafters and we have to have an orgy and all kinds of stuff. And it feels very overwhelming. But in the book, we say that even the smallest changes can have a really great impact on your sex life. So even something as small as trying a different position every once in a while, or maybe even taking your favorite position and trying like, what'll it feel like if I put a pillow under my butt, or if I move my leg over this way? Having sex maybe at a slightly different time of day than you usually do. So if you start with those smaller changes, you'll get the confidence of knowing, okay, we tried something new. It was fun to explore, and you can work your way up to doing bigger things if you want. And we do have a whole exercise in that chapter, a whole menu of options that you can choose from. So it's not like you're going into the restaurant and the chef comes out and says, tell me what you want. You have 10 seconds to decide. Like instead, you get a menu and you get to pick what sounds good to you.
Sort of feels like a new age Kama Sutra book.
Yeah.
I think the other thing when it comes to trying new things that people get their heads about is trying something new is not an admission that you don't like the old stuff. It's not like, oh, well, we have to try something new because now it's the only way that we're going to get excited. It's just an understanding that, like we get to try new things to have new experiences. And maybe a couple of those experiences we're really going to love and we're going to come back to those things. But many of the other ones, they're going to be fine. They're going to be okay. But they're going to be things that we can talk about later, that we can laugh about, that we're going to feel connected over, that we're going to have memories about. And that's what keeping it spicy is. It's not like, oh, we have to always be searching for the next best thing. It's just like, it's just like when you go to a restaurant, you might have a favorite item on the menu, but you're not 100% of the time going to order that thing. Like sometimes you want to try something else.
The special of the day.
The special of the day, right? Like that, it sounds good. I'm going to try that. And next time I'm going to go back, to the old faithful chicken parm or whatever it is.
I love that. So, I guess my question here is there, in your experience, has there ever been exploration into something that is destructive to a relationship or that you would advise against? I feel, I have no idea. I'm like, I need to go read the exploration chapter, obviously. But just from your experience that may hurt a relationship or that you would advise against?
This is pretty rare, and it really only happens when people are pushing themselves too far, too fast. So that's why we recommend just doing little steps at first. You don't have to try something wildly different. So, the best example that comes up is there have definitely been a number of clients that I've had who really pushed themselves to have a threesome and wound up not enjoying the experience. It felt like, oh, I did not like seeing my partner with another person. It didn't feel good. I didn't know what to do. But again, it was just an example example of somebody pushing themselves a lot further than they felt ready for in that moment. So as long as you're being honest with yourself and saying, okay, I'm taking little baby steps out of my comfort zone, I'm nudging myself out, but I'm not diving into the deep end, then you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think it can be problematic if you are engaging in that sort of all or nothing type of thinking that Vanessa was describing before, where it's like, if you're like, oh, if my sex life feels so boring, so then in order for it to not feel boring, I need to go to the other extreme, which is, bringing another person in or doing, hanging from the ceiling or, whatever it is, where, you have no history of doing any of those things that are in the middle. So yeah, we tend to advise against people trying, jumping between those extremes because yeah, of course that is far more likely to be a bad experience because you don't have any other experience that's gonna help you in that area.
Right. And I think it's just clear as kind, as Brene Brown would say, right? It's just like what feels safe in your relationship. I think I probably would have been that person that's like, this does not feel right to me. And that just maybe my experience and my upbringing and my, my need to put my claws into Chris and hold on to him very tight. You probably unpack that in some kind of therapy session. But yeah, I think it's just all really interesting, especially, Chris and I have been together since 2007 and I love him. I'm so happy. But this is also, I think about all the parenting courses that I've taken and parenting books that I've read, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And it's true what you said, Xander, like you watch the movies. I watch the rom-coms. I read, the chick lit. I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be spontaneous and I'm supposed to love every minute of it. And we're supposed to orgasm at the same time and it's going to be great for everybody. And those expectations for yourself all the time will leave you feeling disappointed, wanting more, and almost intimidated to have those conversations in the first place. So I love that you wrote this book. I love that you share all that you share online and through your courses. It's, I think it's perfect for especially couples like us who've been together for as long as we have to remember that you can constantly be a student and explore and learn and get better.
Yeah, and that there can be a joy in it too. I mean, I think there is a great comparison to make with other hobbies that we might have. Like, I get excited to learn more about my hobbies. I'm sure, like with cooking, I love learning new things. I love finding new ingredients. I love seeing new recipes. There's a joy in it. I don't judge myself for why am I not a good enough cook on my own? Why do I have to do all of these things? Why can't I just spontaneously whip things up? So I think we can find that same sort of joy when it comes to intimacy too, that not only is it okay to look for other resources, but it can be fun and playful and exciting and joyful.
Well, thank you for putting all of your heart and soul into your work and to your relationship and sharing so vulnerably online and throughout this book. I think it's a great place for people to start, especially, today is Valentine's Day. So, get in the habit of talking about love and intimacy and desire and pleasure. Now's the time. So thank you so much for being here. Where can people follow along? Where can they learn more? Where can they snag the book?
They can find all the information about the book at sextalksbook.com, sextalksbook.com. We have links to all the major retailers. And if you come back to that page and just put in your order information after you buy it, we'll send you a free workbook that goes even more in depth with different exercises and stuff like that. So that's really fun. And you can find us online. We're most active on Instagram. Our handle is Vanessa and Xander. We do stories together every day, answering community questions, doing would you rathers.
We do a lot of playful things as well.
Acting out terrible sex positions. Yeah, we do a lot of fun stuff there. So it's another great place to keep the conversation going.
And then finally, all the courses and guides that we offer are over at vmtherapy.com.
Love it. Well, you guys have put so much work into this. I will say your Instagram's an absolute hoot. So if you aren't following along, head to at Vanessa and Xander and have a giggle. Well, thanks guys for being here. This was so fun and happy Valentine's Day.
Thanks.